Hey there guys, welcome to Dirt Road Believer. This is the last devotion in July. I cannot believe that we are already here. We have been through the book of Judges in our series called God's Not, and I have saved kind of the biggie for last, which is Samson. Samson covers like 4 chapters out of the book of Judges, and so I cannot wait for you to hear today's devotion, because I promise you somewhere in the life of Samson you are going to find yourself. So stick around for that devotion. I'm going to go visit my alma mater today, Berry College, and see what we can see there. There's one thing in particular I am on a hunt for, so hopefully we'll get that far on campus. It's up on the mountain campus, what I really want to show you in relation to our devotion today. But you may have noticed, I saw a friend yesterday that I haven't seen all summer, and she looked at me and she was like, "Oh, you're growing your hair out." And I was like, "Yeah." So if you've noticed my hair getting longer, you know, there are certain people that I want to be brutally honest with me. First, I would have to say I want my doctor to be brutally honest with me. Second, I would have to say my hairdresser, right behind my doctor. And so I also ran into her at the same event, and I love her, and I hugged her for saying this to me, but she said, "Tina, you need to come see me because you're getting dangerously close to a mullet." Okay, so I get it, all right? I'm going for a new look, but if you've ever grown your hair out before from really short, it goes through stages that are not pleasant. So my apologies if you have been looking at my hair all summer going, what is she doing? I don't know. I don't know either at this point. I just know I'm going for a change. A mullet would definitely be a huge change for me. So she's supposed to call me today, and I'm going to go see her. All right, guys. Thanks so much for being with me today. I love all you Dirt Road believers out there. So, guys, enjoy today's video, and I'll meet you right back here for today's devotion. Thanks. I'm going to show you the most spectacular building on campus. These are called the Ford buildings because Martha Berry, who started this college, she partnered with Henry Ford and got a lot of money to build the Ford buildings. The architecture is stunning. Now these are, oh look, it's Berry's signature poop. Deer poop. They're everywhere. You can't hunt the deer here, so they are very happy and homey here at Berry College. Dang it. Oh, there's another deer. They were just... We can't play that.
I can play clean.
No. Did you see it?
There's another one coming right here.
Here comes another one. He's in velvet. You see another one before I take off again? Look, they're just hanging out in somebody's front yard. Hey!
Look, that was a little spider.
Aww. But these, I believe, are dorms. There are, there's a chapel. There is a an auditorium, like a theater. Not so much a theater. This is an auditorium. This is where I did all my recitals, and the most nerve-wracking recital of all was my senior piano recital. I remember my leg shaking uncontrollably, my pedal leg. So it's kind of embarrassing. And then I'll go over on the other side, but on the other side of this auditorium is where I took all my music classes. So let's take a closer look at just this beautiful architecture. building where I spent most of my time getting my music education degree. This is the music building. We're on the other side of the recital hall now. What'd you say?
I don't think there's a degree for music.
And it is still
Music.
a music department. Let's see.
Oh.
So it was on the second floor. We won't go up there. I spent. You would also like just coming into the music hall. You would have singers gathered because the acoustics in here are so good. So, you know, randomly you would just walk through the stairwell and be serenaded by singers. But I went to my classes here, my music classes. My education classes were somewhere else. But my music classes were the least of the time that I spent here. They also have practice studios up there. So many nights I would just lock myself in a practice room to get ready for juries, recitals, whatever was coming up. But it was all well worth it. But I'm so glad the Lord led me to Berry College. I came here to audition for another college you may have heard of, Shorter. And when I came up here, as an aside, someone encouraged me, hey, you should go by Berry College and meet someone there. So the lady that wound up being my piano instructor, Faye Kiesler, she just met me. Like, it was a whole day planned at Shorter where I had all kinds of tests and they put me through the ringer. And then on my lunch break, she just agreed to meet me over here. And I heard that a little while later that Berry College wanted to offer me more money than Shorter College. So I think that was all in God's plan. But man, what a great time in my life where I could just be surrounded by such beauty every day and wonderful people who influenced me during that time. Allow me to give you a little history lesson about Berry College. As I said, it was started by Martha Berry. This is way back, like late 1800s, early 1900s. And she started in very humble beginnings, long before she met up with Henry Ford, who wanted to help with her vision for a school. She just had a little mountain school for local children. And so they still have the original schoolhouse that Martha Berry taught in. And to look at Martha Berry, you know, you would think just this little old, sweet, humble lady. Martha Berry was a firecracker. Martha Berry got things done. So when we think about a meek spirit, meek doesn't mean mousy, because Martha Berry was anything but she was a meek and humble person. So this is her very first little log schoolhouse, very small. See if we can see inside of it. And it's still here on campus. I don't know if you can see the fireplace inside. But a one-room schoolhouse with all different ages for just extremely poor school children. And that's how it all began. With a campus that is almost 30,000 acres, there's a lot of upkeep that has to be done. And so Berry has a wonderful work program where students can come here and get jobs through the college. So most of the students here are not only students, but they have jobs. But the education department is also top notch. So I know a lot of you schools are hiring. If you get a Berry College grad to apply, scoop them up. We made it. Here it is. It's the old mill. So I'm not able to open the doors behind me, but I want to show you what is inside, and we're gonna have this in our devotion today. So a stone similar to this, and on top of it, where the grooves meet, a stone like this. So the grain, one would be turned in one direction, one in the other, and the grain put in the hole and sifted out the side as it crushes it. This one, oh, don't do that. Don't do that.
Why not?
This mill is powered by a water wheel. The wheel that we're going to be talking about today is powered by hand. All right, we are back for today's devotion, and today's devotion is called God's Not Done Yet. And I'm so excited to get to go through Samson to teach today. And Samson covers 4 chapters, 13, 14, 15, and 16 in the book of Judges. So he's kind of a big deal. You know, as a kid, everybody learns about Samson and his hair and how his hair is the source of his strength. And I just kind of want to take you through briefly Samson's life and the important people in Samson's life, because that's where you're going to find yourself somewhere today, either as Samson himself or someone who surrounded Samson in his life. So we're going to start in chapter 13 with the birth of Samson. So Samson's parents were unable to conceive, and they had no children. So an angel of the Lord appears to Samson's mother and says to her, it is true that you are unable to conceive and have no children, but you will conceive and give birth to a son. Now please be careful not to drink wine or beer or eat anything unclean, for indeed you will conceive and give birth to a son. You must never cut his hair, because the boy will be a Nazirite to God from birth, and he will begin to save Israel from the power of the Philistines. So right away we see that before Samson is even born, he has been chosen by God. He is to be brought up as a Nazarene, which means that this sect of Israelites were very strict in their diet, and they had certain practices. And the interesting part here is that it started with his mother. His mother was called to be faithful as a Nazirite while when she conceived Samson. So we see through chapter 13, then the wife goes to her husband and tells about the angel that's visited, and he's like, well, I want him to come back. I want to be visited by this angel. So the angel does. He comes back and visits the woman again. She runs and gets her husband, and they see him together. And the husband doesn't quite realize, his name is Manoah, and he doesn't quite realize who's visiting him until he tries to offer him a goat. And the angel says, we learn that angels don't eat food. And then he asks him his name, and he says, well, why do you ask me my name, since it's beyond your understanding? So angels do not eat food that we eat, nor do they are they called by names that we would even have any understanding of. And so then the husband realizes, wow, something miraculous just happened. And so they know right away that their son is chosen, he is from the Lord. And we kind of see throughout Samson's story that they are faithful to that role that they have been told of before Samson was even born. So Samson gets up in age, and Samson is tempted by women in a major way. And he goes and he wants a wife from the Philistines to be his wife. And we see faithful, godly parents here who are like, ugh, that's not a good idea, son. You need to stick to a good godly girl. And of course, he doesn't listen. And here is where we begin to see that Samson, he is strong because of his hair. We know that his hair is the source of his physical strength. God tells him never to cut it. But Samson's weakness is women. I mean, they can nag and cry and put on a poor, pitiful act and talk him into anything. And so first, we see that with the woman he wants to be his wife, who tragically does not get to be his wife. And then we see in the beginning of chapter 16 where he visits a prostitute. Then he meets up with the famous Delilah. And Delilah, oh my goodness, she is the very definition of carnal. She is sensual. She is appealing to the eyes. She is deceitful and lying. She tries to trick, and she nags and cries until she gets her way. So she uses as her tool of deception, you guessed it, sex, as is very common then and is still common today, where instead of that being a holy thing that people enter into as a way to honor God in a monogamous and lasting relationship, it is used as a tool for deception. And it works, because eventually, if you are familiar with the story, you know that he tells her the secret to his strength. She then uses it against him. The Philistines come. By this time, they're mad because he has killed lots and lots of Philistines. And so they cut off his hair. He loses his physical strength, and they capture him. Okay, that brings us to the heart of today's devotion. And I'm in chapter 16, and I'm starting in verse 21. It says, "The Philistines seized him and gouged Samson's eyes out. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles, and he was forced to grind grain in the prison." I want to stop right there and I know that's really short, but let's picture Samson now. Samson, who has, many times throughout the story of Samson, it says, "And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him powerfully." Just a side note, if the Spirit of the Lord ever comes upon someone you're near in a powerful way, move, get out of the way. Something about to happen. Anyway, so the Spirit of the Lord came on him many times, and the Lord allowed him to kill like tons of Philistines. And so here he is, this powerful, strong man, and he is pitiful. He is blinded. He has no eyes. And it says he was grinding grain. And here's what I really want to bring out in this story today. It's something that I haven't really thought about before, but the two stones that grind the grain are large stones, and they're circular in shape, and they have grooves. So you have two stones, and they're turning counterclockwise from each other. And the grain goes down into the top of the stone in a circle. And we're not sure how Samson was grinding this grain. It was either in a circular motion with like a peg that was coming up from the top rock, or you may have seen donkeys where they literally walk in circles to grind the grain. And once it's ground and it spits out the sides of the stone, they collect it and back in it goes until it is fine flour to make bread with. And so we see a blinded Samson who is unable to see, who is literally going in circles all day long. And he is grinding out the grain to feed the Philistines. And then my favorite verse, verse 22 says, "But his hair began to grow back after they had shaved it." And guys, here is where I just want to stop for a moment. And I want to look at us. I mean, where are we in this story? Are we the faithful parents who have watched a child grow up to be anything but what God promised? Are we Samson, who has, been, the Spirit of the Lord was upon him at one time, but something carnal and worldly has captured his attention, and he begins to care more about what the world thinks than what God thinks about him? And maybe you've been that person in a relationship that has deceived and used people. Here's what I want you to relate to today. Sometimes we get to a point because of circumstances in our life where we are spiritually blinded and we feel like we are literally going in circles, just like Samson. But I want to tell you that God's not done yet. And that's the exciting part of this story that we're about to see in Samson. Even though he was blinded, he was going in circles around and around, God was not done yet. And if you are not done breathing, then God's not done yet. We see in Samson a man who was set apart by God, but he let worldly things take center stage. He cared more about what the world thought than what God thought. And so, in a sense, before his physical strength had departed from him, his strength, his inner strength, his spiritual strength had departed, and he'd given it away to the world. When we give away to the world that God intended for him, then we become disarmed and we become powerless like Samson. Samson's strength was meant to defeat the Philistines, but when he allowed himself to be manipulated by the sensuality of the world, then there was no strength at all. Where did it leave Samson? It left him blinded and going in circles. And if you feel like this today, I want to give you some hope, because let's go on. Let's move on in this passage. It says, "So the Philistines gathered together." Oh, they were going to make a spectacle of this strong warrior that they had captured and blinded. They were just going to let him come out at this big party and just entertain them. And when the people saw him, they praised their god, little g, Dagon. "Our God has handed over to us the enemy who destroyed our land and who manipulated our dead." But God was not going to be mocked here. They were all in good spirits, so they brought Samson out to entertain him. And then in verse 26, Samson said to the young man who was leading him by the hand, "Lead me where I can feel the pillars supporting the temple, so I can lean against them." The temple was full of men and women. All the leaders of the Philistine were there. About 3,000 men and women were on the roof watching Samson entertain them. He called out to the Lord, "Lord, please remember me. Strengthen me, God, just once more. And with one act of vengeance, let me pay back the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Samson took hold of the middle pillars supporting the temple and leaned against them, one on his right, the other on his left, and with all his strength he pushed. But before he did, he says, "Let me die with the Philistines." Because what God ordained him for, he was willing to do until he had no more breath left. And God is not going to let you depart from this earth until you have fulfilled what he has ordained for your life. If you're breathing, God's not done yet. And guys, look at Samson's life. I mean, my goodness, he made mistakes. He was sinful. He was lost. He was manipulated. He was totally off track from God's intended purpose. But he wasn't done yet. Let's look at one final scripture. This is the Hall of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11. And it says, "And what more can I say? Time is too short to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets." So we see that Samson is mentioned again in the New Testament among David, Abraham, Sarah, Rahab, Noah, Moses. So the mistakes that he made, the manipulation that he allowed to take over his life, that's not what God was looking at. God was looking at a man who, right down to the very end, fulfilled his purpose and regained his strength for the Lord. Guys, I am so encouraged by today's devotion. Wow. I mean, my hair's growing. I kind of feel like Samson. But not into a mullet. I'm so encouraged, guys. I hope you are too. I think this was the perfect ending to this awesome study in Judges called God's Not. If you're just now joining us for this series, go back. They're all on the channel and they're all in order. So thanks for joining me today. Guys, I hope you have a wonderful Thursday and a great weekend coming up. So guys, until August, slow down. Take the dirt road, believer.